Our next speaker for today is Mr. Nikhil Nath, founder and chief executive officer, No Cross by Unifocus, a platform that offers a suite of software applications which streamline hotel operations, boost efficiency, and enhance guest service. Nikhil began his professional career in 1993 at a leading global investment bank, Goldman Sachs, and today he's successfully heading a tech company. In addition to being a successful businessman, Nikhil is an active mentor for budding entrepreneurs and a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization. Formerly a chapter chairman of CII Young Indians, Delhi, Nikhil remains passionate about developing young people to help them realize their full potential and inspire the next generation of global business leaders. Nikhil will be opening up for questions towards the end of his session, so may I please request everyone to pose their questions on the Hotelivate conference app. Thank you.
Morning. Okay, I hope I'm audible. It's wonderful to be back here, Hotelivate team. Thank you for having me, and it's wonderful to see a lot of friends and colleagues after a few years. So I'm very grateful that this could happen. Some of you have heard me before, and some of you perhaps not. So I'm just going to start off by saying I'm a little bit of an outsider to this industry. I've been in it now for almost 20 years, but I still feel a little bit like an outsider because somehow I just view what's going on in this industry very differently from some of you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Maybe as a little bit of a wake-up call, and maybe sometimes when someone gives another perspective, you sort of see it differently. So hopefully I'm going to get you to a point where you can see it differently. I just need to look for the clicker. Sorry. Okay, let me see. So I don't know to how many of you this sounds familiar, right? Certainly to anybody who's in the IT department, finance sometimes looks after IT. When you go up and talk to your CEO or you talk to your owner, or sometimes even the brand, this is kind of the conversation that ends up happening, right? Basically, the guy just doesn't understand what you're talking about, and it ends up in a place where the wrong decision is taken. It's not entirely unusual. It happens all the time, happens everywhere. And it's something that we deal a lot with. Every time that we go talk to hotels, even today, around the world, we find that the focus on technology is sort of marginalized. It's sort of sitting at one end of the room. There's a guy in an office somewhere down below who's handling technology. Starting to change, but just not fast enough. But look at what's going on, right? All your guests want to go contactless. If you think about how much COVID has accelerated this move towards contactless, it was sort of a buzzword, but I can tell you everywhere around the world, there is a lot of money going into making this stuff happen. It's real. There's a lot of vendors that are providing solutions for it. And most of the guests actually want this now. Your next generation of guests does not want to go fill out forms, have a sort of extended interaction at the front office. There might be a small niche group of hotels or certain experiences where that's necessary. But in general, people don't want that. People want a very quick, efficient experience, and certainly people who are in a hurry want that. And the next generation of people definitely don't like interacting when they don't need to. This is yet another example. There's a partner company of ours in the US called Vollara. We started helping them integrate into our backend applications about 5 years ago, and Vollara became wildly successful. And it became wildly successful because what no one realized was that guests actually love controlling things like blinds, asking for the weather, getting Alexa to play music, etc., when they're in the hotel room. And while one thought it was a fad, it's actually not a fad at all. There are hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms that have this technology today, either provided by this partner of ours or many others, but they do exactly the same thing. In fact, to such a large extent that Amazon itself created a special vertical for Alexa, focusing on hospitality, so that it could partner and provide the relevant sort of toolkit for anyone who wants to provide these services within the hospitality industry. And guests are actually loving it. This is something that we do, but there's a lot of other providers out there as well that are doing it now, right? So today, our users can, using their Apple Watch, immediately find out who I am. They can know everything about me from a profile perspective. They can figure out stats on the hotel. They can find out what the room rate is right now. They can find out what was the last reservation that was made, at what rate it was made. They can find out who asked for what. They get notifications to go get housekeeping done in a particular room, or that the AC is not working, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is real. It goes on today. What we expect is going to happen is in the next few years is this will also give a lot of data on what's going on with the person himself or herself. So the staff member, are they okay? Have they fallen down? Is there an injury? Is there an emergency? It's an emergency device as well. And then if you think a little bit further, it's sort of also an environmental detection thing, right? So I think those of you who use Apple Watch know that actually it immediately detects when there's a loud noise, right? And it gives you a warning. Imagine just using that same technology in so many other ways to figure out what's the temperature in the room, right? You could do that. Of course, there's IoT devices as well. But these are just the kind of things that we expect is going to happen. And not only that, all this data is going to be fed back then into some kind of system that is going to have to figure out what then to do, right? So if this is what I'm getting as data, what am I going to do next? But your staff members around the hotel are going to be the source of a lot of that data. This is not unusual again. I think a lot of you probably already have those door locks in your house where you use your fingerprint or you use your eye. This is happening. And in fact, hotels are behind the curve. Today, a hotel room, if you think about it, is possibly not as sophisticated as actually your living room or your television setup at home, right? Biometrics is yet another example where hotels are actually significantly behind, but this is going to come. It's part of that whole frictionless journey. There is technology already out there. There is more that is being developed. And of course, there's security issues and all that kind of stuff, but this is happening. And this is part of that whole process of change where my belief is that we will not actually go through this whole check-in process at all. Not only that, actually, I think we will go to a 24-hour check-in, check-out kind of process, or perhaps taking rooms for a certain block of time from X time to Y time, right? There's a client of ours who actually started 24 hours check-in, check-out, starting with their hotel in London just before COVID. It became wildly successful. And what they found was that nobody was actually misusing it, because theoretically, somebody could check in at 0001 on today and check out at 23:59 tomorrow, right? That actually wasn't happening in practice. They looked at the data, and they saw that most people are just using it for convenience. I'm flying in at this time, I want a room at this time. And then, of course, they're using various kinds of back-end technologies to make sure that housekeeping gets the room ready. They know what time the guest is checking in. So the 24-hour in and out is allowed as long as you specify a certain amount of time before coming to the hotel, what time you're going to be checking in, and roughly what time you're going to be checking out. So that gives the flexibility, right? But this is going to be a key part of that whole shift to saying, I want a room from this time to this time. I want to be able to go to my room. I want the camera to automatically figure out who I am and allow me access, right? A lot of you, I don't know how many of you are gamers here. Maybe your kids are, right? But this is here. I see my 9-year-old daughter. She spends her time in the so-called metaverse, right? It's virtual. She's chatting live with her friends. They're building castles. They're fighting demons. And if I stand outside her door, it looks like there's some war going on because they're screaming away, right? But this is real. What's going to happen with this technology? I don't know if any of you have ever put on those Oculus glasses and ever played a video game or done one of those car racing games. It is so real, it almost makes you nauseous sometimes if the car is going too fast, right? Imagine taking that same technology. That's going to become real. Our phones are going to have that capability very soon. And what's going to happen is everything that you think you are so let's put it this way. We're still, I think, stuck in the world of websites. www is what I've got to get sorted out. That's how people come in and book rooms. No, that's not going to happen anymore. What's going to happen very quickly is there's going to be a full 3D avatar of your hotel room that's going to be available, and that's how people will actually book. People will be able to walk around the hotel and say, I like this room, and you, like a little bit like the airlines do today, will be able to say, okay, you want this room? That's an extra 500 rupees because it's a corner room with a sea view, right? Or something like that. And virtual reality is therefore going to be your friend, right? It's something you're going to have to embrace. It's something that's going to actually allow you to monetize and yield revenue in much better ways than you do today. Staffing. So one part of our business, actually, the US part of our business is very strong on this. We've got a whole product suite around workforce management. And one of the things that we've seen over the last 2 years is that there is such a fundamental shift in employee availability and in the way that I think hotels are going to have to deal with employees in the future. And we see this. We see this in the way that they use the software, when we see this in our discussions with them. So just to give you an example, there were some properties just a few months ago during Omicron that were paying as much as $45 an hour for just housekeeping, okay? That was their cost of housekeeping. So for a 2-3-star property to pay $45 an hour for housekeeping, there's no business. You may as well shut the room, right? And that's net cost, by the way. That's not with all the overages. Our belief is that there is this fundamental shift in staffing is here to stay. We keep talking about the gig economy. It's definitely going to come, or it has come, I'd say. I think just the technology toolkit, if you will, the ability to hire staff on contract very quickly and dynamically doesn't exist yet, but it is coming, right? And employees will want this. You will not be able to attract employees to the industry unless you're going to pay them a lot more, and paying them a lot more on a full-time basis may or may not be feasible. So the only way to do it is to optimize the whole system around how we engage with employees, and also fundamentally to just reduce our employee and our staffing ratios. If we don't do that, it's not going to work. We're not going to have people attracted to this industry. How are we going to compete? I think somebody yesterday on the panel was making the point of losing people during COVID to other employers. How on earth are you going to compete with those other employers unless you can pay your staff more and provide better working conditions and more flexibility? So the only way to do that is allowing them to select their own rosters, allowing them to select when they want to work, how long they want to work for, which days doesn't suit them because they've got a child to take care of, whatever that might be, right? And this is happening, and it's going to come very, very quickly, and I think we need to be prepared. We talk about data a lot, right? If you think about the hotel business, I think any of you in your hotels probably know more about guests than almost any other single entity that guest interacts with, not even the bank actually, right? Because you have their credit card number, you have their date of birth, you have a copy of their ID, you have which side they sleep on the bed, right? You know where to put their water. The housekeeper probably knows whether they're right-handed or left-handed because she or he hangs the hangers accordingly, right? They can figure out how they've used them. You know their food allergies, you know their drink preferences, right? What are you doing with all this data? We know that most of this data is wasted today. But your competitive edge tomorrow is going to be in using this data. Obviously, within the realm of privacy and security and so on and so forth, but it's going to be leveraging the data that you have, and not just guest data, environmental data. There'll be IoT devices around the property that are going to be feeding data into a system. But if you don't have somebody who's capable of analyzing that data, who's capable of understanding that data, who's even capable of figuring out what kind of data you want, this is a lost opportunity, right? And possibly a competitor who actually does that better is going to be ahead of you. We've obviously all heard about Zomato, Swiggy, international ones like Grubhub or DoorDash and Grab. All of these food businesses, right, they're food delivery businesses. Why are they so valuable? There's obviously something there that's going on. But one of the things that some people in the hotel industry have leveraged, but most haven't, is you guys actually have the skills to put the food together. You have scaled up kitchens. You have skill sets, people, the whole infrastructure. These are opportunities to leverage that infrastructure. I don't know how many of you are aware, but the ex-founder of the guy who founded Uber, his next business is actually a very large cloud kitchen business, right? But hotels are a natural cloud kitchen. You have all the infrastructure already. You have the supply chains for the food materials and for all the raw materials. Imagine being able to take all of that and leverage that using all of these distribution channels, because for you it's marginal cost and therefore very high marginal profit if you run it the right way. This is nothing new, but again, think about it, right? How many of us are actually packaging, especially those in the leisure business or leisure hotels, how many of you are actually packaging your leisure activities properly? If you were to rate yourself on a 1 to 10 scale, do you do a good job of it? When somebody comes to your website, do they see rooms and you can select a double or a single or a suite? Or do they say you can have amazing time doing this or this or this, and the room is only incidental, right? And I think we've got to shift there. Some of the tools like virtual reality and augmented reality and various other ways that you can market yourselves with those experiences are going to become very important, right? And I think the next generation of guests, I wouldn't even say the next, I'd say the generation of guests today that is just starting to work, that has already got money in the pockets, that is spending money, that generation, the 25, 30, 35-year-olds, these are not people who go and are really charmed by the size of the room or the 4 fittings in the bathroom or the 5 fittings in the bathroom. These are people who want experiences, right? And you're going to have to sell them on that experience. And if somebody does a better job of selling that experience to them, then they're going to get their business, right? And these people don't know about your hotel through the websites necessarily. They know about your hotel through Instagram or something equivalent that they're on. And so if you don't have an Instagram-first strategy, you are not going to get this consumer. This consumer is not using a travel agent. This consumer is going directly. This consumer is interacting with platforms that they like interacting with, okay? We all obviously know about the fact that the OTA has disrupted business quite massively, right? Over the last 20 years, it's probably been the most significant shift in our industry. How much of money gets allocated to the OTAs, the extent to which the OTAs control the business, right? But OTAs are continuing to evolve as well. You may think of Airbnb as a player in the homestay business, but it's not in the homestay business. Airbnb is going to start distributing hotels. There was talk about Amazon starting to distribute hotels. Google is coming up very fast. Google is probably going to try to make a play for the travel industry. It's just trying to weigh how much money it makes from Booking.com as an advertising customer versus how much money it would make if it were to go directly and start offering its own travel services, right? But there are others. Sonder, VRBO, et cetera. All of these people are potential channels. And unless we understand how to play these channels, unless we understand how to yield optimize around these channels, we're going to get left behind. I remember many years ago, a client of ours who ran a very large property in Singapore, a casino property. Do you know that he had a team of 12 PhDs doing nothing but yield management? Each of these PhDs, just to give you an idea, was paid $300,000 a year. Okay? He would recruit them out of the best schools in the United States, and he had a team of 12 people optimizing revenue. Now, it was a $1 billion operation. It made sense. But I can tell you he made a few extra $100 million every year because he had this team, and he was just front and center with what he wanted to do. And then last but not least, I stood here on this stage actually 5 years ago, and I think I said that some of you should start accepting that, if you can, start accepting Bitcoin as payment. So for anybody who listened, I'm sure you've made a lot of money. You can come and share some with me. But for those who didn't, I can tell you the whole payment ecosystem is changing around us. And actually, India is actually at the forefront of this. If you look at what's happened in the payment systems game in India, we are so far ahead of most of the rest of the world. And it's continuing to evolve. I think in the RBI, we've got a very, very forward-thinking group of people who are actually enabling our ecosystem to accept a whole bunch of different payments. I'm sure we'll figure it out around crypto and other forms as well. But this is another thing that's going to happen. And I think the corollary on this also that's going to be there is that we're going to have to look at ways to also make money, not just in traditional ways by saying I'm selling my room at a margin of X or Y, but also in other ways by saying, if you're going to come and book a room, I'll finance your stay, right? I'll give you financing at 6%. I'll give you financing at 8%. All you have to do is sign up, you click, you give me your credit card details, and I'll auto-debit you for the next 12 months for a great vacation, right? So things like that are going to start happening. And now the only question is a big brand going to do it for you, or are you going to start doing some of that stuff yourself? So before I close and take questions, I guess the thing that I really wanted to say, which is what I started with at the beginning, is the future is here. All of these things are happening in some shape or form. Some of them are happening faster than others. The question is that your decision makers, the people who run your hotels, should they have the skill sets to be really good at understanding how to cook food? Should they come up from the background of having done housekeeping? Or if you look at the way these things are headed, do you really want somebody who is more technologically savvy, educated, and experienced to be really taking you into the next decade of business as your leader, and someone who can fathom what's going on in this world of technology and make it front and center as part of your strategy? I'll stop there. Thank you. I don't know if there are any questions. Okay, sorry, I'm starting to see the questions. One second, where did they go? Blockchain, yes, definitely. It's a big one. I think it's coming. I think there's many, many uses of blockchain in the hotel industry. I don't think anybody's really come out with a product that is sort of front and center usable just yet. But I do think there are many uses of blockchain in the industry. It lends itself perfectly well to solving a number of problems that we have today. One of my favorite examples is, why can't hotel room blocks be tradable? Why, when I reserve a room, why is it in Nikhil Nath's name? If I wanted to sell it to person X, why couldn't I just transfer that room block and the name automatically updates? That's a great use for blockchain, right? Someone's going to do that. It's only a matter of time. Does technology play a supporting role across industries, or is it taking over and taking away from the essence of service? No, I don't think it takes away from the essence of service being provided. If you have 10 less people to provide service, then the few that are, then those that are left are going to have to use technology to provide better service. I know some of our clients, for example, some of the top hotels in the world and at the very high end of luxury, use our tools just to be able to know who the guest is. And they have their guest profile with them. But they don't have 20 people surrounding the guest. They have one person who's probably catering to 25 guests. How is that person doing a good job? Only because technology allows them to have all the data that they need to do that job in the palm of their hands, right, or on their watch. So the third question, reliance on tech can reduce the quality of staff as an outcome of increasing efficiency. I don't think I agree. I, in fact, think that the quality of your staff is going to go up, and you will find it harder to recruit people. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to have perhaps a more educated, more tech-savvy staff member, but you'll have fewer staff members. And then, of course, what happens to the bottom line? Yes, it's going to impact the bottom line, but when industries transform, efficiencies come in new ways, right? It's not the same form of efficiency. You're going to find efficiency in another way. You're going to become very efficient in housekeeping, perhaps. You're going to find that you don't need a whole front office with 10 people in it. You can actually do check-ins because half the people are checking in contactless. You can halve the staffing in the front office. So I do think that technology brings around a lot of efficiency. So expensive servers and hardware plus SaaS contracts are a big issue. Why is everyone not moving? My sense is there's always been a bit of a concern around security, and I think those concerns are slowly going away. I think the world has moved to SaaS fairly fundamentally. I think almost everybody in the C-suite, even in large companies around the world, who was concerned about putting stuff in the cloud, those concerns have gone away. AWS is the norm today, or Microsoft Azure, or so many others, including Google Cloud. So I think this has happened. It's here, it's real. Your security concerns are no different from anyone else who deals with a lot of sensitive data. So if there are risks, which there always will be, you're at least in a boat where others are also taking that risk. So I'm being warned that my time is up, but thank you. I'll be outside if anybody has any other questions. Thank you.